Let's talk about this socket. So this socket has a very specific plug that matches the pin set of this cube relay. So that makes it kind of nice, so you don't have to worry about building custom end connectors for these. But it didn't come with any spec sheet or anything that told me the type of insulation on the wire or the diameter. So I had some little samples around. I've got some 10, some 12, and 14, and you can see that mine is matching up with the 14. So if we go over to our UGLYS manual, it says you can run 15 with that type of insulation, 20, and then 25. Well, what it's really saying is, hey, that's the max it can really handle. Sometimes it can handle a little bit more than what they say, but you need to fuse your line less than that 15 amps, or you're going to run the risk of burning it up. Now, you can reach out to the manufacturer and say, I need a spec sheet on this wire. I'd like to know the size and the insulation type, or can you tell me how many amps you're recommending that I run on the wire? And they may just send you a little piece of paper that says, here's what you can do with it. Well, for me, I know that at 15 amps, this line could potentially turn into a fuse. And the only way you're going to know is if you test it, because it possibly, as the book shows, could handle 20 or maybe even up to 25. But I know if I fuse it under 14 or under 15, the fuse is going to go before the wire. And that's why we use this manual. We're trying to protect our wire. So let's go back over here. Why does it even matter? Why do we have to pick wires? Well, I've got two lights. They're both 12 volts. And you can see there's a positive and a negative and a positive and a negative. And they're going to get wired in parallel. And with each of them being 18 watts, Ohm's law says that watts is equal to volts times amps. So you can kind of do a little math equation and say, well, I've got 18 watts, because you can always add up your watts, plus 18 watts gives me 36 watts. I can then divide that by 12 volts, and that means that both of these wired up in parallel will give me 3 amps of power getting used. So I'll take my positives and hook them up together in my negatives, and we'll run one of the segments to the battery, and then the other, like reds or the blacks, will run through the relay, and we're going to bring power through here, and we've got to actually run it through that pin. And that way we'll be using the low voltage electromagnetic coil on the relay. When we turn this on, we'll put positive to negative across here, and it will turn on and it will switch that. So this is basically just an inline switch that's controlled with an electromagnet. So anyways, I hope that gives you a good understanding of how to fuse things and figure out what your wire size is. And just remember that on these relays, the contacts are much more heavy duty than they are on a switch, and so they're going to handle the arcing that happens that you don't really see when the contacts open and close on DC power. And going back to that switch and looking at it, same thing, right? He can handle up to 20 amps. So in theory, I could probably run these lights without this switch. But the reason that I want the relay is so I can add a whole bunch more lights in parallel, and I want to know how many watts I'm putting on the line and fuse for that, so I'm building out an expandable system.